The first time Ethan saw Amelia, she was standing in the corner of a quiet bookstore while rain tapped gently against the windows. She was holding an old novel with a faded blue cover, smiling as though she had just found a forgotten memory hidden between its pages. Ethan had only entered the store to escape the storm, but the moment he looked at her, the sound of the rain faded into the background. He had never believed people who said love could begin with a single glance, yet something about her peaceful smile made him wonder if they had been right all along. He picked up a random book and pretended to read, but every few seconds his eyes drifted back toward her. She noticed him once and smiled politely before returning to her book. That tiny smile stayed with him long after she walked away. Before leaving, she accidentally forgot a small bookmark on the wooden table near the reading corner. It was decorated with tiny hand-painted stars and had a simple quote written across it, "Some stories find us when we least expect them." Ethan picked it up and hurried outside, hoping to return it. The rain had become heavier, and the street was almost empty. She had already disappeared into the crowd. For days he thought about her. The bookmark remained inside his wallet, not because he wanted to keep it, but because he hoped fate would somehow give him another chance to return it. A week later, that chance arrived. Every Saturday morning Ethan volunteered at a local animal shelter. While helping clean one of the play areas, he heard a familiar voice laughing. He looked up and saw Amelia sitting on the ground, gently playing with a frightened golden puppy that refused to leave her side. She looked exactly as he remembered. "You left this behind," he said, holding out the bookmark. She looked surprised before laughing softly. "I thought I lost it forever. I've been carrying it around all week." She smiled. "Then I guess destiny wanted us to meet again." That conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. They spoke about books, music, movies, childhood memories, and dreams they had never shared with anyone else. It felt strangely easy, as though they had known each other for years instead of hours. From that day forward, Saturdays became their favorite day of the week. Sometimes they volunteered together. Sometimes they explored little cafes hidden around the city. Sometimes they simply walked through parks without saying much because silence between them never felt uncomfortable. As autumn arrived, the trees turned shades of gold and crimson. One evening they sat on a hill overlooking the city lights. "What scares you the most?" Amelia asked. Ethan thought for a moment. "Losing someone I love." She looked toward the sky. "Mine is never finding someone who truly understands me." He smiled. "I think you already have." She looked at him, and for several seconds neither of them spoke. The world around them seemed to disappear. Months passed, and their friendship slowly transformed into something deeper. Ethan remembered every tiny detail about her. He knew she always ordered hot chocolate instead of coffee. He knew she cried during emotional movies even if she had seen them before. He knew she secretly loved watching the sunrise but hated waking up early. Amelia knew Ethan just as well. She knew he always smiled when he was nervous. She knew he hummed old songs while cooking. She knew he hid his worries behind jokes because he never wanted anyone else to carry his burdens. One snowy evening Ethan invited her to dinner. The restaurant overlooked a frozen lake filled with tiny reflections from hanging lights. Halfway through dinner he became unusually quiet. "Are you okay?" Amelia asked. He nodded before reaching into his jacket pocket. Instead of a ring, he pulled out the old bookmark. "You once said stories find us when we least expect them." She smiled. "I remember. I think ours did." He gently placed the bookmark between their hands. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I don't know where life will take us. But I know I want every chapter of my future to have you in it." Amelia's eyes filled with tears. She reached across the table and held his hand. "I've been waiting for you to say that." That night they officially became a couple. Life was beautiful. Or at least it seemed that way. 6 months later Amelia received an incredible career opportunity in another country. It was everything she had dreamed about since childhood. The offer lasted 2 years. Neither of them knew what to say. "If you stay because of me," Ethan whispered, "you'll regret it." "If I leave," she replied, "I'm afraid I'll lose us." He smiled sadly. Real love shouldn't become a cage. She accepted the opportunity. The airport goodbye became the hardest moment of their lives. They promised to call every day. At first they did. Video calls lasted for hours. They watched sunsets together through phone screens. They celebrated birthdays online. They counted the days until they would meet again. But time zones grew difficult. Work became exhausting. Messages became shorter. Calls became less frequent. Misunderstandings slowly replaced laughter. One evening Ethan waited 3 hours for a scheduled video call that never happened. The next morning Amelia apologized. "I fell asleep after work." He understood. Or at least he tried to. Weeks later Ethan forgot an important anniversary. She cried. He apologized. Distance was changing both of them. Not because they loved each other less. Because life was becoming heavier. One night they argued. Not over anything important. Just accumulated loneliness. When the call ended, neither of them said, "I love you." It was the first time. Days passed without speaking. Ethan stared at the bookmark every night. He wondered if their story had reached its final page. Meanwhile Amelia found herself walking through unfamiliar streets, surrounded by thousands of people, yet feeling completely alone. One rainy afternoon she entered a small bookstore. The smell of old paper instantly reminded her of the day they first met. She smiled through tears. She bought the exact same novel she had been holding on that first day. Inside it she found another bookmark. It read, "The best stories survive every chapter." She immediately booked the first flight home. When Ethan heard someone knocking on his apartment door, he expected a delivery driver. Instead he saw Amelia standing there, carrying a suitcase and holding the old novel against her chest. For several seconds neither of them moved. "I was afraid I was too late," she whispered. He stepped forward. "You never were." They hugged each other tightly. No speeches. No dramatic explanations. Just relief. Over the following weeks they talked honestly for the first time in months. They admitted their mistakes. They admitted their fears. Most importantly, they admitted that love alone was never enough unless two people chose each other every single day. Amelia decided to continue her career remotely. It wasn't the easiest choice. Ethan also changed jobs so they could spend more time together. Slowly, they rebuilt everything. Trust returned. Laughter returned. Hope returned. One spring morning Ethan invited Amelia back to the same hill where they had once watched the city lights. Instead of sunset, they arrived before sunrise. The sky slowly turned pink and gold. Birds began singing. The city awakened beneath them. Ethan reached into his pocket again. This time it wasn't a bookmark. It was a small velvet box. He knelt on one knee. "Our story has never been perfect," he said softly. "We've had beautiful chapters. We've had painful chapters. But every single page has been worth reading because it has you." He opened the box. Inside was a delicate ring with a tiny star engraved on the inside. "Will you write the rest of our story with me?" Amelia covered her mouth as tears rolled down her cheeks. She laughed through her tears before answering, "Yes." As the first rays of sunlight touched the horizon, he slipped the ring onto her finger. Months later they were married in a small garden surrounded by family, close friends, and dozens of rescued dogs from the shelter where they had met. Even the golden puppy that had brought them together years earlier was there, now fully grown, happily running between the guests. Instead of expensive decorations, they filled the venue with books, flowers, warm lights, and handwritten notes about kindness, hope, and second chances. During the reception, Amelia surprised Ethan with a gift. It was the old bookmark, carefully framed beneath a piece of glass. Below it she had written a single sentence. "Our favorite story was never the one we read. It was the one we lived." Years passed. Life continued bringing unexpected challenges. There were stressful jobs, financial worries, sleepless nights, and moments when everything seemed uncertain. Yet whenever life became difficult, one of them would quietly place the framed bookmark on the table between them. Neither needed to say anything. It reminded them how their story had begun in a rainy bookstore, survived distance, fear, misunderstandings, and time, simply because they never stopped choosing each other. One evening, many years later, they returned to the same bookstore. The owner smiled as they walked through the familiar aisles hand in hand. Ethan noticed a young man nervously watching a girl reading in the corner, too shy to speak. He smiled knowingly. Amelia gently nudged him. "Go on," she whispered to the young man. "Some stories find us when we least expect them." The young man smiled, gathered his courage, and walked toward the girl. Ethan looked at Amelia. "Do you think they'll have a happy ending?" She squeezed his hand. "Every great love story begins with hope." Together they stepped outside into the soft evening rain, smiling as they walked beneath one umbrella, grateful that years ago a forgotten bookmark had led two strangers toward a lifetime of love, forgiveness, friendship, and endless new chapters that neither of them had ever imagined were waiting to be written.